This week's show is supported by Granola, the AI note-taker made for professionals in back-to-back meetings, online or in person. As an advisor, consultant, or manager, Granola gives you complete flexibility in how you inform participants and handle consent. No bot joining the call, just quiet, unobtrusive capture running on your device. It works across everything: Zoom, Google Meet, Teams, and on your phone for in-person sessions too. The real superpower? Querying everything across every call you've ever recorded, or drilling down into a single project history in seconds. Set up your own custom reports, spot patterns, and connect to all your favorite tools: Notion, HubSpot, Zapier, and more. It's not just a note-taker, it's a second brain for your business or your practice. Thanks to the nice people at Granola. Use the link at go.granola.ai/Michelle, and they'll extend your 1-week trial to a full month. The link's in the show notes, or visit go.granola.ai/Michelle.
Hi there, and welcome back to the Energy Sector Heroes podcast. My name is Michelle Fraser, and every week I will speak with incredible people who share their lessons, experiences, and stories from their time spent in the energy sector. Hi there, and welcome back again to this week's episode. If you're new to the show, then please take a second to subscribe and even consider sharing the show with just one other person. This week I am joined by Ryan Menzies. Ryan is the director at Apollo. Ryan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, good morning, Michelle, and thanks for inviting me to your podcast. Yeah, my name is Ryan Menzies. I'm a director and founder of Apollo. We're an engineering consultancy business based here in Aberdeen, although we have offices across the UK as well.
Excellent. So how did you get started off in the energy sector?
It's quite an interesting journey, and I've listened to some of your other podcasts, which are excellent, by the way. Well worth a listen for anyone else that's tuning into this to listen to some of the back catalogue. But listening to some of your previous episodes and some of the people that you've had a great array of people, and a common thread is often interesting and diverse journeys into the sector, into the positions they find themselves. And I guess that's similar with me. I'm a farmer's laddie, originally brought up in Highland, Perthshire in Kenmore. We had a small farm there that I worked on as a young kid, but it wasn't sustainable really. Farming's challenging at the best of times, and we diversified that business. My father diversified that business into the tourism industry, converted farm buildings into cottages, and made some fields into a caravan park and such like. So I got quite early business exposure there, both from working on it, taking bookings, helping on the marketing and stuff like that as a teenager, and really enjoyed that. However, I was doing okay at school, not scraping by, I would say, but I was doing okay at school and had an interest in engineering, and a great interest in aerospace engineering as well. So that took me down to Glasgow to study aerospace engineering down there, where I had an enjoyable time in Glasgow. I went on to do a PhD, but somewhat stuck in the academic rut, and I found academia a little bit slow. And through some connections, I got speaking to someone who was based up in Aberdeen. I'd never been to Aberdeen before, and they said, come up for a chat. I came up for a chat, and the next thing I knew, I found myself in a new job working in Aberdeen.
Okay, so what made you go into study aerospace engineering?
It was a love of aviation. I actually, when in school time, during my time in school, I loved aviation and wanted to be a pilot, actually. So I figured that I was encouraged to go to university by my parents. I did that. But when I got to university, I suddenly realised, although I was okay at maths, I suddenly realised how maths could be applied to real world, sort of real life, if you like. And from a career point of view, that relevance, something dropped, and I started to excel somewhat in academia. But so that was sort of the reasons there. But I did find that the academic lifestyle was a little bit slow going. I made the most of it. I had some great experiences. I managed to get a work placement with the Air Accident Investigation Branch just through outright perseverance. They'd never taken on a student placement before, and I just wrote to the boss of the Air Accident Investigation branch outlining the benefits of why taking on a student placement would be good for them, and they bought into that. So I had some great experiences, but academia wasn't for me, despite me staying on for about nearly 10 years in the end and doing a PhD and so forth. It was a little bit too slow going, and I had an itch to get into the business side of things just because of my upbringing. And as I say, some connections led me to the discussions in Aberdeen, and I took that road here, and I've loved it ever since, frankly.
So you've had quite a varied career. How do you find the careers of the younger generation coming out of the universities now? How do you see their careers developing in the energy sector?
I think in many ways it's not really changed to when I came through the system, if you like to sort of put it that way. When I arrived in Aberdeen, what I was seeking and what I've certainly found was that fast-paced nature to the industry, the can-do, the go-get. I arrived in around about 1999, 2000 or so, and quickly realised that I joined a small company. I was their first employee, so I was sat in a room with 3 directors of this business, Prospect Flow Solutions, as it was called back then, and I was employee number 1, and just got involved was curious, got involved in lots of elements beyond just the engineering element that they recruited me for, and I progressed through the ranks with that business by being curious, by sticking my hand up, by getting involved in the wider business and supporting them. So at the end of the 10-year stint that I did, I was the MD for the UK operation of that business, which was great fun. But I then left with another colleague and set up Apollo. But to take it back to your question, I think for new entrants into the industry, it's interesting. We're on the lookout for graduate engineers just now. We've had the most applications we've ever had, which is great on the one hand, but it's somewhat depressing on the other hand that there's so many graduates right now that are looking for roles in the energy industry. And you hear this rhetoric about skill shortages and such like. And I do believe that there will be future challenges and skill shortages. But however, right now we've got an issue. We hear about mind the gap, and we've unfortunately put ourselves into a position as an industry and as a country where we've created a bit of a gap due to the energy transition, due to politics, due to other external factors that's created a little bit of a slowdown. There's not enough inwards investment in projects, not just in the oil and gas sector, but in renewables and in energy more generally. However, I'm highly optimistic about the future, that things will resolve themselves over the coming years, and that there's an highly interesting career opportunity for people into the sector from a technical perspective. There's all the support functions you need. But once you get a foothold in the industry, then, as I say, it comes down a little bit to attitude and behaviours as to how much you can make of that.
So what would your ultimate advice be to anybody coming into the energy sector?
I suppose on the one hand, you could say that's an easy question, but to bring it back to Apollo, and when we set up the business, the first thing that John and I did, John was my business partner, was we set out the values for the business. Those values were SAFE, and we used the acronym SAFE, where S in SAFE stood for safe itself. And wasn't just about holding the handrails and safe practices like that. It was having a business plan that was safe, that could get you through good times and bad. So we had financial metrics in our plan that were safe. We had recruitment metrics that were safe. The A in SAFE stood for attitude. And attitude is everything for me. When I speak to people that want to join Apollo, it's about their attitude and what drives them more than their CV, how they want to progress their careers, how they could help other people progress their careers. Just having a good attitude helps you build a good foundation for success. The F in SAFE stands for future. So with good people, you can create a future for your business, for yourself, and for others around about you. And the E in SAFE stands for enjoyment. At the end of the day, we all have to work. We have bills to pay, mortgages. We've all probably been into companies that I class as Monday companies. You go in and it just feels a bit depressing. Less frequent is you go into a company that feels a bit like a Friday company, where it's looking forward to the weekend all the time. So I like to call Apollo a Wednesday business. We're somewhere in between. We have a bit of fun, but we've got work to do for our clients as well. But setting out those foundations was really important for us, and sets the culture and the behaviours for people that join. And if they can embrace those values, those behaviours, subscribe to them if you like, then that allows them to flourish, to challenge the status quo, to stick their hands up, to get involved in other parts of the business. They may come into our business thinking they're going to be a mechanical engineer or process engineer or whatever it may be. But actually, we've got real life examples of people that are now in operations and sales and other functions in the business, where they've joined the business with a completely different idea or objective initially, and things have evolved. And it's largely and usually due to the individual themselves and that curiosity, that eagerness to support and recognize that the better the company does, the better the individual does, and that you can make a difference beyond your maybe just what's in black and white in your job description.
Do you think it's important for not just graduates, but for anybody to go over and above your job description nowadays?
I think it depends. You need, as with everything, you need a variety. Variety is the spice of life. And I think for companies, having a variety of people, if everyone was wired exactly the same and in some of the things that I'm talking about, then it might not lead to a successful business. As much as you want people to push the boundaries of their role or their remit, there's some people are driven to progress their technical careers that might be actually in line with their job description. Everyone's has different sort of motivators and aspirations. So it depends. But I think if you're aspirational, if you want to accelerate your career and be tested and perhaps explore other areas beyond what your background may be, then I think it is important to go beyond your job description where that's appropriate. And if there's not all companies are maybe encourage that sort of type of behavior, but certainly in the SME space, it's all hands to the pump. It can be different demands on different days. One day it might be there's a shortfall in work, so it's who do we know and that could have work. And the people that join the business have all got their own networks and can all make a difference in that. In Apollo, we've got a business development team, we call it, but we've also got right round the whole organizational chart, we call it business generation. Everyone that joins Apollo is part of the business generation. If you're front of house, if you're one of our lead engineers, project managers, the ops director, the MD, whatever you may be, you know people or you can make a difference in that space. And where people are keen to go and network themselves, to speak to industry colleagues, it helps them to progress their careers. It helps them to expand their horizons. It helps their knowledge and understanding of the challenges that clients might be facing. And through the course of those conversations, that may lead to other opportunities for the business or for themselves as well.
That's really good advice. But you were saying, you mentioned before that you were hiring for a graduate. What do you look for when you're trying to sift all the CVs?
It somewhat depends, but in general terms, with graduates, it's more the attitude than what's on their CV. Quite often with graduates, you can look on face value. The CVs might all look the same, but the devil's in the detail and in what we often look out for, where people have tried to get some work experience, for example. I'm quite passionate about trying to provide work experience to school and university students. We've got 4 school students in the office right now, 2 of which I've encouraged into the business to spend a week and to gain a little bit of experience. But people where you going above and beyond to try and find these types of placements, because it's not easy to find them, that can be quite a great indicator. But it's down to, as I say, that when we're looking at the CVs, it's getting a flavour for what the attitude is of the person person, what the drivers are that they've got, what we think is a positive attitude, that they don't just want to progress their careers, as I said earlier, but they want to help others round about them and give a foot up to others too, and support others along the way. What goes around comes around. So I think it's beyond the grades. I look in CVs, what drives people, what makes them happy, what they enjoy outside of work as well, can be quite a good indicator to the type of character they are.
Okay, and that's good advice as well. But when you're interviewing them, apart from attitude, and they have to have a positive attitude about what they want to do, what other things do you look for?
We often ask about and it's the usual questions about where they see their careers in the future. As I say, there's no right or wrong answer to that type of question. It's more gaining some insights into their level of sort of thinking. We have had some graduates join us in the past where they're just applying because it's a job and it's come up. Their heart's maybe not really in it, which is not going to be good in the long run for them or for the company that they're going to be working for. It's when you're a graduate and a new entrant to the industry, then without being in it, it's hard to know if this is going to be the right career choice or not, of course. And it may well not be the case. And we've had experiences where that's not been the case and you part ways because it's just not right for each party. And that's the best outcome for everyone as well. But I think in the graduates that apply for us, it's trying to get a feel for that ambition that they have, because we need people to be ambitious, be it that they want to progress their career, they want to progress their careers and take my job. That's absolutely fine. That'd be music to my ears to hear that sort of ambition. But it might be that people haven't got that aspiration to be a director in a company, but they want to be a technical authority in their area, and they want to progress themselves technically. Again, that is absolute music to my ears. But it's having some thinking about that they've got some ideas about their future career path and the launch pad, pardon the pun, that Apollo could be to support that.
So do you think that it's harder for a young professional to climb the career ladder nowadays?
I think it is. In all honesty. When I entered the sector, it was actually just coming out of the back of a bit of a downturn in the late 90s. But there was more activity generally going on, certainly locally here in Aberdeen, but nationally and internationally as well. Nowadays, as I say, I think we're on the market for 4 or 5 graduate engineers for this year's intake, and we've had something like 350 CVs that from graduates that have applied. As I say, that was, on the one hand, it's fantastic to see that level of interest. On the other hand, it's probably an indicator that there's a lot of graduates out there looking for work right now. And as I say, it's concerning. The state of the industry is a concern to some extent in terms of how we can satisfy those create opportunities. When I say we, I mean the supply chain more generally here, for those graduates, because we know we need graduates are the future. We know that we need them into the industry, but right now there's a challenge on the oil and gas side with UK production, what we're doing, imports, the EPL. There's all this licensing. There's labour stance around that. So I didn't want to necessarily go down this rabbit hole, but it is causing an unnecessary challenge for the supply chain in terms of a shortage of work. That meaning that there's more redundancies happening in companies as opposed to recruitment of graduates. So I think just now it's worse than it ever has been. For graduates that have found companies such as Apollo, we are still in growth mode. I wish we could grow a bit faster than what we are to take on even more graduates, but we're growing at as fast a rate as we deem as safe right now. The rest of the supply chain is not necessarily all enjoying that success, similar sort of success, so is maybe not managing to recruit as much as they would like to either. So it is a challenge, but the future, I am very optimistic about the future of the energy sector. We need energy. Energy is in transition. It always has been, it always will be, but we know that there's going to be more opportunities on the horizon. We believe that there will be some positive changes on the oil and gas side to do with, from a UK production point of view. There's an emerging energy vector in and around hydrogen, sustainable fuels. We're actively involved in that. These projects are starting to get going. We've just kicked off a major hydrogen project with a client yesterday at feed stage that's going to hopefully go through the gears over the coming years and allow us to recruit more people into the business. Where there's the carbon capture sector, there's decommissioning. As much as I think some assets maybe shouldn't be decommissioned or being prematurely decommissioned, there's big opportunities in decommissioning in the short to mid-term as well. So every direction I look, I see opportunities. There's just a short-term challenge right now with the volumes of work that I think the supply chains are seeing.
Do you think it's important, if you're wanting to work in a small to medium size consultancy, that you need to have a good network around you?
Do you mean that network of your peers in the company, or do you mean a more wider sort of network?
Yeah, I mean a more wider network.
I think that's sometimes a trick that graduates miss. I've been to a few business breakfasts recently where I was at a table and there were some students from various universities, and I thought that was great to see. That was not something that I was brave enough to do when I was a student. It was not something that I really thought about. And the fact that some of these people are going to events like that, networking, creating connections, is a really powerful thing to do. There are lots of opportunities out there, even just now. However, they're not necessarily advertised, and it's getting to know businesses and to demonstrate that positive or that attitude that you might bring to things. Having a conversation with people can lead to opportunities. So I think networking is a really good thing to do. It can be quite a daunting thing for certain types of characters, and I would class myself as one of those. I'm a half introvert, half extrovert, I guess I'd say. When I push myself to go to these events, then I really enjoy it when I'm there. But sometimes I dread the thought of having to go and mingle with people and sell my wares, sell the Apollo story, be it to try and attract people into the business or trying to attract projects and work into the business. But I do that every day, but it doesn't necessarily get any mentally easier for me. And I'm sure some students can that sort of statement or thought or reality might resonate with them as well. But if you can, people generally are kind or good-hearted or want to help at their heart, and I think that's largely true of almost everybody. And when you go to these events, people will chat to you and will try and help you wherever they can. So I think building a network is invaluable, because it will support you in the future, both building a network externally, but internally, once you join a company as well, making connections, helping people around you. As I say, that comes down to that attitude. What goes around, I'm a big believer in what goes around comes around, and going that extra mile for others, not just for yourself, will pay dividends.
I think so too, actually. How would you advise a young graduate, a young professional to go about networking?
Nowadays, I guess if we're thinking about kind of local to Aberdeen and the energy sector, then there's been a lot of shifting sands, a lot of change. That companies in Aberdeen are active beyond oil and gas, beyond Aberdeen, beyond the UK. There's a lot of companies are diversifying probably more aggressively and more actively than they ever have. So that horizon of networking, or the sorts of things you can do, are more varied now than they ever have been. There's lots of events here in and around hydrogen, energy transition, renewables, offshore wind, and the like. There's lots of different types of events. I think a good place to start is, and it's something I did as a graduate, was join an institution. Although I was an aerospace engineer, I was a member of the Aeronautical Society, but I was also a member of the Institute of Mechanical Engineers. And they have young persons forums and panels and working groups and events that not just what young people turn up to, but the industry professionals come along to these events too, and they can be very well attended. So that's a great place to start off your networking journey, if you like. It's a safe space. There's lots of people that are in a similar sort of situation to the young graduates, and you can chat chat to them and start to build confidence in networking yourself and selling yourself really effectively is what it comes down to, which sounds a little bit crude, but that's everyone's a salesman in one shape or form, I think, in that regard.
I think you're actually right. Actually, do you think it is important to be your own cheerleader and salesperson?
Yeah, I think it's something that it's done in an appropriate way. I love to see that. I don't think I was terribly good at that, maybe too bashful or whatever. But if you don't say it, then who is going to? Don't be shy to tell people what you're good at, what the value that you think you can bring to a company, because companies are not charities. They have to. The hard facts is they have to be sustainable and make money and have. Everyone needs to bring something to the party or add some value to that story and what they're doing. And I think that if you can get that point across around the value that you can bring to a business and sell yourself, I think that's a positive thing to do. Sometimes it could be seen as being big-headed or boastful or whatever it might be, but that's I think far from the truth. People want to hear the positives and hear the story and hear about the drivers for young graduates and what makes them tick, really. And the only way you can do that is by explaining that, by selling that, by getting these points across.
Okay, but it could be, when a young graduate's going for an interview, it could be hard for them to sell themselves because they might think that they don't have enough experience, or they're maybe not sure where they want to go in the future. Is it important for a young professional to have all that answers right away?
No, I don't think so. I think it's to have ideas and to have sort of basic drivers is important, though, to explain why you're wanting to do something, to show that you've given some thought, because companies do make investments in new recruits and in graduates. In our business, effectively for the first year or two, we're assuming that we're training them up, that crude term I used just a short while ago, the value you can bring to a company. It's not about necessarily the hard income or whatever you can create for the company, but it's the graduates bring energy, they bring questions, curiosity that challenge that status quo. Challenge the status quo is part of our values. Why do we do things the way that we do? They bring fresh thinking. They might look at a calculation sheet and say, why do you do this? We can automate this. We've got real examples of certain types of work that we've introduced AI and automation and software tools to take the boring, mundane parts out of the job. It's not to displace jobs. It's actually to create more opportunities, use software, use AI to do tasks that are appropriate and free up people to think and to think ahead and to get the head above the parapet. But to properly answer your question, I think with graduates, you don't know until you get your first job and get some time under your belt. You're not really sure where your career might take you and where you want. But once you do get that opportunity, I think your horizons broaden and you start to see opportunities that you never thought about before. But you certainly won't have all the answers and all the thoughts up front. But I think it's important to get across the point that you will make a positive difference to the company. You'll bring that energy and that curiosity that the young people naturally have, and that different way of thinking. It's real positive for businesses to embrace that and to help drive positive change in companies.
So a lot of young graduates and young professionals, when they come out, they might have, starry dreams about working for a big multinational energy company. Do you think that that's more beneficial for their career, or do you think working in a small consultancy is they're going to learn more?
When we first set out Apollo back in 2010, we quickly got to about 12 to 20 scale that I class as being a sustainable business. We had recruited via our network, and I talked about the importance of networking earlier, but not just with clients, but with people that could maybe work for you as well. So we phoned some people that we'd come across through our journeys and persuaded them to join Apollo. When we got to a scale where we could start to take on graduates, some of the early conversations with graduates, we found fantastic people with great attitudes, but they had a level of fear for joining an SME, a small business. Some of them did, not all of them, but it depends how you're wired. I think that
while we appeased that fear that you'll have a safe and secure career with an SME as much as you will with a large corporation, it's some people are maybe, I was going to say predisposed, but they're more aligned perhaps in their attitude and their view in life to maybe join a large company. Large companies can bring different opportunities that might be better aligned to them. They might be interested in working internationally. If you work for a large service company, for example, that's already international, then that will maybe satisfy that demand and that thing that you're after, as opposed to joining a smaller company like Apollo at that time. And still to this day, actually, although we work internationally, we have an office in Italy now, but it's taken us 16 years to internationalize our business. It's not really been our entire focus. We've largely been focused in the UK, but if I've promised graduates that one day Apollo will be an international business, but I've not promised graduates that we can, within X number of years, give them a post overseas. So examples like that, it might be that larger organizations are more suitable for you. I think it's harder to perhaps make a difference in a large company, or you might be more pigeonholed or go through a more formal program with large companies. With smaller businesses, it's easier to influence factors and that sort of graduate development program that you go through. It's easier to shape that in slightly different ways, perhaps, in a small business. So comes down to the individual and perhaps where they're sort of kind of what they're mentally aligned for at that stage.
Okay, and that's really excellent advice as well. So maybe one more question, and you've probably answered it before. If you were going to give one piece of advice to a new graduate coming into the energy space, what would it be?
And that's a tricky one. As I say, I have talked around about that curiosity, the sticking your hand up, and all the rest of it, and maybe covered that base, getting involved, rolling the sleeves up and helping others around you. And we've talked around that. But I suppose one piece of advice I would give now is maybe more sad that, I need to do that or say this, but I truly believe in the future of the energy sector here, in the supply chain, and companies like Apollo that can provide an excellent career journey for them. So the one piece of advice would be that to have belief in the energy sector, that there are solid careers there for you. There's still solid careers in oil and gas, but you can transition your career really quite easily, actually, into other forms of energy in companies like Apollo. We have people one day working in oil and gas, the next day working in hydrogen, the next day working in wind. Skills are really transferable. That's not the challenge. The challenge in the sector is more is kind of broader than that and driven by other factors, as we talked about before. So I think the piece of advice would be to have the faith that the energy sector is dynamic. It has its challenges right now, but it goes through challenging cycles in the past. And one thing that's always proven to be the case is that off the back of these cycles, a lot of activity happens and a lot of things resolve themselves, and that will be the case just now. So there's to have the faith that you can have a long and successful career in the sector. That it's that these challenges bring a certain sort of bring positives as well in terms of the dynamics, the rate of change, the agility of the supply chain to adapt to challenges and to adapt to change. Creates a dynamic working environment that sometimes you're never quite sure what's around the corner. That sort of thrill of the ride can be a positive element as well. So to have the faith in the sector, we need skills and resources. The graduates are the future, and that companies like Apollo are hungry for people that can make a positive difference to businesses.
That's excellent advice. So I'm going to leave the conversation there. So that's all the questions I have today. I would like to thank Ryan for your time. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening, and see you next week. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, I'd like to gently encourage you to leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts and share the show with another person. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or via my website, www.michellefraserconsultancy.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.